If I could go back and roll it back, I would say, which I would do now, is if you want to be angry, you can choose to be angry. I don't have to be upset. I can let you deal with your anger. If you want to come to me and talk to me about it in a healthy way, I'll discuss it. It was just learning that I don't have to, my moods, my actions are not based on somebody else. I cannot convince someone that something about me is not true if they want to believe it.
Stand on your 2 feet and look up to the sky. Open up your heart and let your spirit fly.
Hey, welcome back. I'm Bob Noonan.
And I'm Roger McDermott.
And you've just joined us for Stepping Out. We call Stepping Out, our weekly broadcast. It's stepping out of the darkness and into the light. We all, Jesus said, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, I'll give you rest. We're all wounded. And if we can just admit that, there's peace and grace on the other side in his arms. And, we deal a lot with substance abuse, codependency issues, really about do your own recovery and stay in your own lane is something Roger and I say every week. But today we have somebody who's a master teacher. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's got, I read it was a 2004, she won the Silver Medallion Award from the Evangelical Christian Association for Books, something.
Booksellers Association.
Okay. 10 Lifesaving Principles for Women in Difficult Relationships. That's the one that Karla Downing got. The next book is When Love Hurts. And that's a little bit different because it's not just dealing with women in relationships or men. This is any relationship you have. Change My Relationship, which is, I think that is the name of your ministry, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a 365-day devotional. And the last book, The Truth in the Mirror, a guide to building healthy self-image. Welcome, Karla Downing.
Thank you for having me, Bob. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah.
I never know what's going to go.
Yeah.
Let you lead.
You know what? This is not any tricky questions because I know her ministry, and so many people have told me how they've been helped by it. And Karla, you've primarily taught at several different churches in Southern California, very large churches. Chuck Swindoll's past church that he founded, which was Evangelical Free Church in Brea. Mm-hmm. And then you also run groups over in Yorba Linda Friends Church. And I see that you have another teacher in Arizona.
I have classes that are online.
Okay.
And people that sometimes teach my classes at their church.
Yeah, well, there was a woman's name in that. And I love the fact that you have online stuff. Is most of that canned and anyone can jump on and just start it when they want to?
Well, I have it. It's two ways. I teach them locally at Friends Church in Yorba Linda. And then I also have all of my classes videotaped, where you can either buy the self-study, which is the downloadable study guide, and the links to watch the videos, or join a Zoom class that is offered online at a particular time. And that's where you get the discussion of the materials, which I absolutely, just like in any 12-step program, I totally think is helpful for processing and in a healing journey. But if people don't want to wait until they can, enter into a Zoom study that's offered at that time, then they can buy them on their own.
I think one of the most, Roger, healing effects, C.S. Lewis said we read to know we're not alone. We go to meetings to know we're not alone. We go to church to know we're not alone. And for a woman or a man or anyone that's in an abusive relationship, be it emotional, psychological, verbal, or physical, sometimes they're so isolated that they're alone. And they need to know they're not alone. And
absolutely.
When people go to AA and they realize, hey, people are telling my story.
Yeah. If you listen,
Yeah.
you're going to hear your story.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's frequently shared in meetings.
And not only that, but you get hope, because if somebody was where you are now and they're further along, then they give you the hope that, oh, I can be there. I can get there too.
Well, Karla has several expertises, as I said, a licensed marriage and family therapist. But Karla, long before I graduated from Pepperdine, I was telling people my real education was in my family of origin, where I was raised by an alcoholic father and a codependent mother. Now, what was interesting is my father became the senior vice president of a large corporation. We looked good on the outside, and my mother was running around always trying to control. And I've always said this, addicts use substances to medicate what's going on in here. Codependents control the outside world for the outcome they want to medicate what goes in here. Is that right?
Absolutely. That's one of the definitions of codependency. And my upbringing was similar. My mother was a codependent, and my father was an alcoholic. But he was a very, very accomplished engineer, and my mother was an elementary school teacher, but he was very physically and emotionally abusive with my mom, but not with us kids. So that's where I got my start too. And then I went into a very dysfunctional marriage, because my husband was raised also in a dysfunctional home, and so we put that together, and that's where I continued learning.
It's funny because, as you talked about being overwhelmed, angry, hurt, rejected, all those things, it was your father that said maybe Al-Anon would work for you.
In my 6 years into my dysfunctional marriage, my dad at that point had been in AA for about 8 years and working a really strong program. And he said, you're at a really difficult place. You should go to Al-Anon, you'll find help there. And I did. Within the second meeting, I asked a lady to be my sponsor, and I was in a marriage with emotional abuse, and I was really, by that 6 years into it, I had gotten very confused and self-questioning and doubting myself. And she said, we're going to figure this out together. We're going to get it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
You know what I learned in my childhood, Karla, is my mom desired my father to pay attention.
Oh, totally.
To adore her or to love her, which he never did. And I look back at it, and he didn't know how to love.
Right.
And I think the more demand she put on him, he actually pulled further away, because to do that would have been, for him, I think, too frightening, to be that vulnerable. And I don't think the only time I saw my dad vulnerable is when he was at a speakers meeting in AA.
Yeah.
And he made his amends in front of 200 people to his family.
Wow.
And I was going, wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then I didn't know how to handle that. But I'll tell you what, my mother was such a and everything was about perfection. Mm-hmm. And there was I'm the third of 4 kids. And I could walk into the house, they go, oh gosh, Bobby's home. Because I was the only one that didn't buy into it.
Yeah.
But my mom took each of us, all 4 kids, dropped us off in Uptown Whittier at a woman's house for Alateen. Mm-hmm. And I was there at 8 and 9 years old.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the expertise you have really starts from your childhood. Mm-hmm. You learn, you can go to school and get all the degrees we want, but we still have things to work out. And the thing about your work is staying on your side of the street. Like, for instance, when you go over the 10 life-saving principles, mm-hmm. And I like this. The first one you start off with, Roger, is understanding Scripture.
Yes.
Scriptural truth.
Yep.
And you and I were talking before the broadcast, if I've seen it with so many churches where the women not only get abused in their relationship, especially if the man's going to church, they'll get abused in the church. Just go home and submit.
Yep.
And as we were talking, the Bible says to wives through Peter, wives, submit to your husband in all things as unto the Lord. See, that as unto the Lord is rarely brought up, but
Yeah.
when would God ever ask you to sin or to sign false tax returns, those kinds of things?
Never.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's only one of the scriptural truths that I
Yeah.
go through. Others are that, you don't have to always put other people before yourselves. Like in fact, you use the example in Ephesians 5 of husbands, how they're supposed to care for their own bodies just like they care for their wife's body. And it says, because no one neglects their own bodies. So I say, if you've ever wondered if you are supposed to always put others before yourself, think about that scripture and recognize that by the Holy Spirit giving Paul that example, that you do not, that taking care of your own body is essential, normal, not sinful.
It's not a sin to love yourself. It's a sin to only love yourself. Love others
Exactly.
as you love yourself.
Totally.
Or as Christ loved the church, for he gave himself up and died. So I think the standard for men, see, God doesn't ask women to die necessarily. They sacrifice a lot. But I think that when I see, the sad part when I'm speaking at different churches and you see this, I oftentimes see women dragging their husbands rather than the husbands leading their family.
Yes.
And with Daniel here, we just did a podcast with Daniel Lyman. He's a great mentor, and he disciples a lot of people. And I see all these men carrying their Bibles now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But when you go through this list, and I'll just read a few of them. You can stop me where you want, but
Okay.
Reach out. Well, that's about not being isolated.
Correct. That's about taking the initiative to go and get help wherever you need help, whether it's at a church recovery program, a secular recovery program, or a counselor, which oftentimes husbands who are really kind of controlling will tell you, I don't want you talking to anybody about our problems. And so that's often something that right there they have to recognize, I'm allowed to get the help that I need to do what I need to do to take care of myself and my family, and also to confront the sin that my husband is doing, to be able to get strong enough to set boundaries, to say, no, this isn't okay for our family. And so that's the first hurdle that they have to often get past.
That leads right into your third one, which is change yourself, not the other person,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely. And that's the opposite of codependency, because codependency, whether it's because I'm focusing on you in order to fill the inside of me, or if it's because I'm obsessed with your behavior because it's destructive to you, destructive to our relationship, destructive to our family, that I have to figure out, okay, I've got to make you change. I've got to talk you to the point of getting the help that you need so that you'll stop what you're doing. And that becomes an obsession. And when that becomes an obsession, it is not helpful. So the first thing you got to do, all about powerlessness, and the first step is not just for the addict being powerless over alcohol or drugs. It's also about the codependent, who oftentimes it'll say powerless over people, places, and things. Admitting powerlessness over being able to force someone to change, but turning the focus onto yourself, recognizing, I'm not responsible or causing this person's behavior, but I have a part in the craziness in this home that I have to change. And that's often the beginning of the change for not only the home and yourself, but sometimes when you let go of trying to force the other person to change, they recognize that and they begin to make choices for themselves. We know once you get into any program that it eventually has to be your own recovery that you care about and not for someone else.
How about detach with love?
Oh, that is well, they're all my favorite, but
Drum roll.
one of my favorite, I used to say, and we didn't mention, the reason that I'm here, the reason that these books are written is because of Bob Newman.
Oh.
Because I went to church at Friends with Bob Noonan when he started Steppin' Out, and I was in a 12-step recovery program in Al-Anon. And I told my husband, okay, there's a recovery program in this church, but I never want to get into church recovery. I'm comfortable where I am.
Yep.
And then Bob came into our Sunday school class, and of course, I was impulsive back then. And I said, hey, Bob, do you need any help? And he said, sure, come on. And I wasn't a therapist back then or anything. And Bob gave me an opportunity to begin speaking to your group, to speaking to the women. And because of that, when I went to a group on how to write a book, they said, write an outline of what you could write. And I said, I can write what I teach the women. And I wrote down the outline just like that, to 10 life-saving principles for women in difficult marriages. Not only that, Bob became my supervisor for my MFT degree hours and also for my internship.
And it's about Bob.
Bob,
This is about you. But, the truth is, you and Gary Brown, Gary was a phenomenal speaker too, and he was so kind. What was interesting about Gary is, he's passed away, and I went back and performed his wedding back in Atlanta many, many years ago after he left and went back home. And Gary, we were sitting out in his backyard, and he said, Bob, when I came back, I got a son who's an addict, and I got a daughter who's doing these kinds of things. He goes, I needed Al-Anon.
Yeah.
And so he didn't quit going to AA, but he incorporated Al-Anon.
Absolutely.
Isn't that interesting that sometimes I see when people stop drinking or using drugs, they tend to try to control the world. They got to do something. And I was just so pleased with Gary because he was a great mentor to so many young men.
He was.
And as you are to women. That detaching in love, Karla, that's interesting because we do that. People who say, well, you're not being loving. There's gaslighting and all kinds of stuff, detaching.
Right.
And I always often tell people, love, the concept of love in Western society is feelings. In Scripture, it's the choice to do what's right. Feelings follow.
Right.
And so if we're going to be loving, it's kind of like, Ephesians, Paul doesn't say it once, he has to say it twice. Speak the truth in love, and the second time, speak the truth in love for all members of one body. And Paul has to remind us to speak the truth in love because we don't.
Right. Well, and then also the detaching has to do after you change yourself, not your husband, or change yourself, not them. The detachment is recognizing that you are a separate person and focusing on yourself instead of the other person. So it's like detach from moods, detach from a person's choices, detach from a person's accusations, detach from blame, detach from anger, detach from lies, detach from, and then you can put crisis. If there's a crisis, you detach from the crisis. And it doesn't mean you don't care, like you said. It's literally about recognizing I'm a separate person. I know for me, one of the things I really struggled with was my husband was frequently angry about whatever kind of ticked him off, right? Or he was very moody with those things. And for the first 20 years of our marriage, my goal when he was angry or upset with me was to try to explain to him why he shouldn't be angry and try to convince him not to be angry. And in the process, it did not work. And in the process, I got angry with my children. And then it ruined our whole night. And
If the
home
kids would
was
just be okay, everything would be fine.
yeah. But what I did is I stirred him up more. Because he could be angry and he'd go off by himself. But then I'd follow him and I'd try to convince him why he shouldn't be angry. And then it would erupt and then I would be upset. And I learned in my family of origin that I was allowed to yell and be angry. So the whole family was in turmoil. If I could go back and roll it back, I would say, which I would do now, is if you want to be angry, you can choose to be angry. I don't have to be upset. I can let you deal with your anger and your feelings or you're upset. If you want to come to me and talk to me about it in a healthy way, I'll discuss it. But if you don't, you can go do that, and I'm going to continue with whatever I was going to do. And I might have not had dinner necessarily that night to bring somebody that was angry into a family situation. I might have gone and sit on the kids' floor and played games with them, or gone out in the backyard and had a picnic, or what, it was just learning that I don't have to, my moods, my actions are not based on somebody else. And whatever it is they say, I cannot convince someone that something about me is not true if they want to believe it. I can't make somebody stop blaming me for their situation. I tell people today, if somebody is blaming you, they will continue to blame you until they want to take responsibility for their own stuff.
Well, unless they take the first step in AA.
Exactly.
Just the admission step.
Expect it. Expect their blame. Expect the accusation.
This is a good time for Roger. I don't know if you know Roger's backstory when he. Why don't you tell it, because you detached but not in love.
Oh.
And then when you went back in love. Tell that story.
So, yeah. I got married way too young,
Okay. How young?
22.
I was 20. Yeah.
That's good. So there's more people that are more sick than I am. It's good to, also so good to meet you. We got married, and I didn't know I was an alcoholic, and I got into a sales job right after college. Anyway, long story short, I abandoned my family in 1985. So 11 years after marriage, and it started early.
When Chuck Smith
married me and baptized
Oh, wow.
both of us.
Wow.
Yeah, and alcohol and drugs took me out.
Yeah.
But I got my third DUI, which is in 96. So I left them in 85. In 96, I had that moment with the man in the mirror when I was trying to stay out of jail. And I realized that I was an alcoholic. That was the first time I fully conceded to my innermost self. So I began this journey in 1996. Well, while I was gone for those 11 years, my wife, who had 2 alcoholic parents and came from a dysfunctional, abusive, divorced family, she started drinking heavy.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I could see God's hand all over this now. She died in 2013 from alcoholism, and I was there, so we were cohabitating. But in hindsight, now looking back, I have more love and respect for my wife, who I took hostage, a person that was already damaged. And I had no idea about all of my character defects and all the issues, because I had really good parents and 2 older brothers. I had no idea how selfish I was.
Spoiled. So
I was spoiled rotten.
Okay.
But I had no idea how selfish I was and how everything, self-centered, self-seeking. But when I look back on it now, I have a ministry. I understand alcoholics and addicts.
But the point is, when he started working his program, he went back home, reconciled, and took care of her till she died.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I was there, and that started me. Even though it was challenging, but it started me having more love for her and respect for her than I ever did before.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So Karla, when you, one of these is in the 10 life-saving principles, face your fears. Now, what I find interesting, because it took me years to do this, I won't see anybody who is actively using until they do the steps. Because if they don't do this, if they don't get some coping skills, if I push them into a fear, the only coping skill they have
It's drink.
is drinking. So I want them to get something under their belt, have a sense that they got a group meeting, they've got some people they're calling, they got a support system. And then I think, and I don't think, you're not saying that these are absolutely in order.
The only one that is that it comes at the end, that you have to do all of the other ones first, is everything has to be done before you set boundaries.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do all of the other ones, you are not going to be able to set boundaries. For instance, face your fears. If you haven't faced your fears of, oh my gosh, what if I set a boundary and the person leaves?
Right.
What if the person dies? What if the person, loses our house? What if the person quits their job? What if the person, my kid never talks to me again. How could you set a boundary? Because setting boundaries is scary.
You know, it's oftentimes, and you've counseled enough to know this, and I'll say, as a Christian therapist, so you've laid out a list that if this was evidence, this person would be convicted in a court of law. So you've laid out this. Why are you still with this person? Now, when I say that, I'm not saying divorce.
Okay.
I never say divorce because divorce is the last thing. As Townsend said, when relationships are based on lies, there is no relationship. And so I often, tell them when they start to set boundaries, things change, and they can change. And it doesn't mean it works in everything. I remember I went and visited years ago Dr. Ed Wheat. He wrote Love Life for Every Married Couple. The only problem I had with Ed is I love the guy, he's a neat Christian man. He was an MD that went back and got his marriage and family license. Because he said he's seen all these women with anxiety disorders, and it was primarily because of dysfunction in the home. He said one person can change the marriage. I said, Ed, you're forgetting something about free will. And so the one person he used in his book, the guy happened to be a general manager of one of the world's greatest teams. And his wife was done with him. He really neglected them for years. And so when they were counseling with Ed, he said, just start serving it. Just start serving it. So the man get up every morning, he'd make fresh orange juice, he would do it. And, it's interesting, about 10, 15 years later, they divorced anyway.
Yeah.
There was something not dealt with.
Well, and you can't promise someone that when you change yourself, the other person's going to change. Abusers will get angrier when you detach because they're, how dare you detach from me? And they'll put the pressure on. Oftentimes, narcissists, abusive people, toxic people, and really destructive, they're going to also put up the pressure when you set boundaries because they're going to be like, no way, you're not doing this. So it's not a guarantee that setting the principles. What I tell people is, and what people will say about my books is, it gives you permission to stay without feeling shame, and it gives you permission to leave without feeling shame if you come to that place. And I think as counselors, that's what we do. We don't tell anybody to leave. They have to come to that place, but it will change you. There will be changes in the relationship, but that doesn't guarantee that there's going to be enough change that the marriage can be saved.
Well, I don't think anybody needs to put up with being physically, emotionally abused. I wouldn't tell anyone to stay with a serial adulterer or a physical abuser or somebody who's doing coke or going through a six-pack or that's nothing for the guys that drink.
Yeah, they just
go for 24-pack. But I have seen many times where people detach in love, as you said, and they can actually move out to create the space to heal. And that allows the person who is struggling in their addiction or whatever they're struggling with to figure out what they want.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because, there's some people I've just said, it's erupted in violence as you can't stay together now.
Right.
The police have been to your house. Somebody's going to jail. You have to separate. If nothing, you got to do it for the kids.
Yeah. Well, exactly. You can't let the kids be involved with that.
So speak the truth in love. That's a tough one when you're dealing with gaslighting people.
Well, I have in the book, the chapter just talks about being, direct, being honest, being consistent or persistent about how you speak your truth. And when I teach it in my class, I go through probably about 40 specific things that will mess you up with speaking the truth in love. And some of those are trying to convince the person that what you're saying is right, that they trying to change the person's mind, speaking to the person when you're reactive, that type of thing. I've got this whole long list with scripture for each one where that is going to trip you up from keeping you from speaking the truth in love. But, sometimes when you're dealing with a difficult person, you have to learn. I had to learn because I did speak the truth often in anger or in long lectures, but I had to learn sometimes not to say anything. And that's something that I've learned even in the past couple of years, more and more is just, I don't have to answer. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to argue. I don't have to defend. I don't have to explain.
Yeah, great
I
place
can
to
let
be.
it drop. And there's such peace in that for those of us that feel like,
Yeah.
you know, we have to just, I used to just keep on and on and on. And it was not productive and it was exhausting to me.
Yes.
We would tell my mom. My mom didn't get the response she wanted from Dad, so she would follow him around the house.
Yep.
And finally he said, that's it, I'm done, Virginia. He'd grab his keys and he'd leave and go, Mom, why did you have to do that?
Yeah, because you didn't want him to leave.
Yeah.
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 So,
I learned something along those lines. So, speaking to that, I tell people, say what you mean what you say, and don't say it.
That's one of them on my list.
I love that. And the other thing is when you're, my sponsor would tell me frequently, Roger, don't ever miss an opportunity to close your mouth.
Exactly.
Because
be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger.
Yeah.
that stops everything when you don't respond.
There's a scripture in the King James Version in Proverbs that says, when words are many, sin is not absent. Now, they changed it in the NIV, but I remember that, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, yes, we have to learn to shut our mouths sometimes. And, so there's just a lot of different things people can use, and that's part of what this book is, which is, all of my 365 daily devotions is like there's 365 tips of how to navigate difficult relationships or your own unhealthy self-image or your own codependency with any and all people or life, and how to apply those things. So there's just so much.
Those are the kind of books I need.
Yes, they work.
A devotion, a daily devotion.
Yeah.
That's to the point, short and sweet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to watch a Zoom or that's what I need.
10 years ago, I gave you that book.
Okay.
Oh no,
A
what's
couple
it?
of them. You have
Not this one. This one.
Oh,
this
not
one only
that
came out in like 20.
Okay, but I
think it was
remember I
20.
came by your house and picked up a bundle of
It
them.
wasn't that one.
That was probably one of those.
Okay.
Yeah, because this one I think I can't even remember my own book. It was published in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
But devotions are great.
Yes, there is.
So when we're looking at this, we go from setting boundaries. I love when you say at some point you make the kids a priority.
Yes,
And the last one is enter God's rest.
yes.
That's not the graveyard, that's peace. and
That's surrender and acceptance.
now, what is different in your other book, When Love Hurts?
Well,
You have 10 principles there, but
yes,
they're a little bit
the
different.
only one different is there's a chapter on forgiveness
Uh-huh.
instead of the prioritize your children. So prioritize your children is about how a woman in a difficult marriage, in a destructive marriage, can take care of her children because they're often neglected. They're often, we don't recognize, what we can do for them. So that is that one. And for me, that was the most painful part of my dysfunctional marriage was that my children, all 3 daughters, were impacted severely. And I have my regrets. And I've had to do a lot of self-forgiveness and acceptance and self-compassion over that. But yes, so that one is forgiveness. But the When Love Hurts, 10 Principles to Transform Difficult Relationships is the same principles, but applied to all difficult relationships.
Could be your boss, it could be a
be
church,
everybody.
it could be...
Could be your ex-spouse, it could be your adult child, anyone.
Karla, let me go back because a lot of, especially with 10 Life-Saving Principles for women, it's really dealing with a husband who might be abusive or an addict.
Anything.
But on the other hand, when I've seen it, and Roger's seen it a lot, is that when the man changes first and the woman doesn't, and you get into Al-Anon or some codependency group, what I have seen marriages fall apart because she will never let him forget what he did. And his sin is always dropped in. And it's used as a guilt offering that you owe me.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's your goal, I have seen that a lot of codependent women they forgive for so long, and then they get to a point where they become bitter.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to let go, and they want to use that against them. But the ones, at least in my classes, that are coming to get help want to forgive, although it's very hard to forgive. But a lot of them are under the pressure that if they don't forgive, God's not going to forgive them. And I tell them, if you're saved, you're going to heaven, even if you're struggling with the process of forgiveness. That is not
We're saved by grace, not of our works.
Exactly. But, again, that toxic teaching that they get from church where they pick things up, and especially when you're codependent, you're very black and white, and you might have a person in your life who's also kind of black and white and rigid and using condemnation and shame to try to tell you those things. But yeah, you have to forgive. Forgiveness is a process. I mean, obviously, if you don't, like in an affair, if you don't forgive, the marriage is not going to get healthy.
Right.
And it's not going to be restored. It's not going to survive if the spouse that was betrayed doesn't at some point forgive and allow the person to rebuild trust. So forgiveness is, when we talk about forgiveness is the gift that you give yourself. And bitterness is the pill that you give someone else thinking that you're going to poison them, but instead you're poisoning yourself. But it is a process. I teach it is a lengthy process, and it involves the grief process. It involves grieving about what you have lost and what you have gone through and the consequences that you will forever bear, the changes that your life has, the things that even like with your children, how they're affected. So it's a long process, not an instant process that some people will say, okay, you just found that out, your spouse is doing this or this going, okay, you have to forgive. It's like, I need some time to work through this, and you do. So it's okay to take that time.
Well, the books are 10 life-saving principles for women in difficult relationships.
Difficult marriages.
And difficult marriages. It could be difficult relationships.
Yes, you could use that.
So many people are shacking up these days.
So that's right.
Karla.
Well, it was back in 2003, so.
When Love Hurts, 10 principles to transform difficult relationships. And then the devotional, 365-day devotional, changed my relationship. And then there's another book, a new book, The Truth in the Mirror. And I think this is timely because of what we're seeing is that, and especially as you and I were talking earlier, running the eating disorder program for the Charter Hospital, every young woman that came in had some dysphoria about their body. And they were either anorexic, most 85% were bulimic. And Karla, I'm seeing the same thing today, is that there are trends. England, Europe has now pulled away from
allowing the
blockers.
Yeah, and puberty
blockers. And the thing is, if you don't let them transition, the thing is well, they'll commit suicide. Europe did a study that more committed suicide after they began to transitioning, and you have a whole group of people, like this doctor in England, Royal Academy. She was retiring, which is highly respected. They asked her to do a little bit of a longitudinal study on this, and she did, and she found out if you don't give the puberty blockers, by the time they're 18, it's gone from 100% that want to transition down to 10%.
Yeah. And I look at that as two groups nowadays. I mean, you have the small, very, very small subset, less than probably, 1% or less of people who struggled with gender identity for their entire lives, like since they were children.
Right.
But today, it is actually a created social contagion by what's been taught in schools. And when you take extremely vulnerable children, elementary school children don't have an intact gender identity anyway. They're not necessarily thinking, am I a girl? Am I then they know that they're a girl or a boy, but they're not questioning it, most of them, okay? And so then if you just do that to them, and then you go into junior high, and you say to these vulnerable girls who really struggle with self-identity and social interaction and social skills, and you say to them, whatever's bothering you, maybe it's because you're not the right sex. If they don't belong to a group, and all of a sudden by saying, I want to, which is what she's saying often happens, is when you're a girl and you don't have an identity and you feel kind of awkward in your body, and all of a sudden you say, I think I'm a boy, and you start dressing like a boy, all of a sudden you get attention, you get an identity,
It's
you get
reinforced.
support, it's reinforced completely. And so it becomes this, what they actually, it's almost like a social hysteria with the numbers that they see. And one of the things with it being taught, and then the whole focus on the trans agenda, and I'm not saying that I don't have compassion for somebody who really struggles with sincere gender identity, but when you have children that's what all they have to say is, I think I might be a boy or girl, and you start giving them hormones, you are turned from support to being destructive.
You know what's so funny is when Freud was doing his writing, and I'm no great supporter of Freud, but he did notice a social kind of contingent in that women were fainting.
Yeah. Yep.
It was called hysterical.
Yeah.
And in public, they would just faint. And they really were, but it was a hypnotic kind of thing. And then, you know, we went through something in the 20s in America. There was another thing. But then we hit the 60s, 70s. There was a rebellion there. But the 70s and 80s was about bulimia, anorexia, and body dysphoria. And the sad part is a lot of these kids that are going to go through puberty blockers are never going to have children.
Yeah. Very
They're being mutilated. You know what, Karla, as a Christian, I want people to love the body that God gave them. But on the other hand, if you're 18, 25, you're an adult. That's your choice, but don't do it to children. Don't do it
No,
to 10-year-olds.
absolutely
you know?
not. And it's also, we know that there's a force that wants to destroy the family. And it's really a part of that agenda to destroy families, and that it is destroying families.
Isn't it interesting? We know Satan wants to destroy families. But Marx, Engels, all of them was talking about the destruction of the family unit and marriage and all that.
And religion.
Religion and the family unit. And it's kind of like, oh my gosh. But
That does all of it, right?
Yeah.
Karla, how can people get your books?
Okay, well, first of all my books are on Amazon. You can just put my name in. It's Karla with a K. And my website is just changemyrelationship.com. And on that, I have a very simple sign up, subscribe, which is free forever. You can unsubscribe anytime. You will start getting emails that give you all of I do YouTube videos, I do a podcast, I do I do a free devotional that's sent out about every week. And then they also get emails that tell about upcoming classes when they're offered, or...
So they can subscribe.
Yeah, they can subscribe very easily on my website, changemyrelationship.com, and look me up on YouTube also. So it's all there. Books are on my website if you want to know more. If you want to have me come to speak to your church, I'm ready and willing.
That's awesome. And you know, we're freeing prisoners, ladies and gentlemen. And before you're in a bad relationship, sometimes we're a prisoner of our own mind. We think people perceive us a certain way. We have to act a certain way. We got to be free. I mean, James talks about how do we control the tongue and have some discipline. But we got to be free to be what God made us to be. You know what? I worked with her for years over at Yorba Linda Friends Church. You know, this is the 20th year I worked with him.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, but I need to carry the cross. Just kidding.
He says, but Bob's older than me. I'm
2 days.
3 days older.
Oh, that doesn't count. Really?
He's older. We're both born in the same hospital, Murphy, uptown. And it closed right after
Oh, my
we were
After Bob and Roger were born in that hospital,
They closed.
They destroyed it.
Close.
You know what? It was kind of like, well, we got Rob and Roger. What's the encore? We got to tear it down. Actually, it became dorms for Whittier College.
No, that's really interesting. That's very nice.
All right. Well, Roger, you have anything to say in closing?
What a pleasure. What a pleasure to meet you. And I remember the last time that I think you came to the church.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I
it
did.
was great. Kindred spirits right here,
Yep.
talking about broken relationships and how to really recover from virtually anything. Those are principles to live by. No
Yes.
matter where you are, who you are, what you're up against, that'll change your life.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's all from the Bible.
That by itself will help change your life. but you have to have a support system with you.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you don't have some accountability, if you're going to Al-Anon, get a sponsor.
Yep.
You're not alone out there. So for Karla, just thanks so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
For Bob Noonan,
And Roger McDermott.
thanks for joining Stepping Out. And if you like this, please subscribe.
Don't grind the gears no more. You don't need another score. Don't try to run away. It's the dawn.